Good day, learners. Grade 12 geography learners. Welcome today to today's geography lesson. My name is Rajendra Devchand, and I must tell you that this lesson is proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Education Department. My colleague, Mr. Kamlan Nair, is very eager to receive your WhatsApp calls. He's just waiting for them, for your areas of concern. So we do have a WhatsApp interactive number. So learners, take this number down. It's 064 748 8913. I'm going to repeat that. 064 748 8913. All your areas of concern, refer it to my colleague. As I say, he's very excited and he wants to answer those questions of yours. Okay, learners, what we're going to look at today is rural and urban settlements. All right? And we're also going to focus on economic geography of South Africa. We're going to revise over those areas of concern, and of course we're going to focus on your main areas of concern also. Remember, you are our priority today, and as geographers we want you to do excellently tomorrow, and I hope you prepared well. This is going to assist you to take it further. Okay, so you must be aware, and I know your teachers must have told you this already, the new formatting of the paper. This is Geography Paper 2, all right? And you will know that it's a 3-hour question paper, all right? You know already you're writing them on different days, and the question paper consists of 2 sections, Section A and Section B. Section A is your rural and urban settlements and economic geography of South Africa. And Section B is your geographical techniques, application, and GIS, what you commonly refer to as map work. All right? Now, remember, in that map work, there is going to be an integration of your rural and urban settlements and your economic geography of South Africa. So practicing that is also important to see how you can relate those sections to the map. Now, Section A has 2 questions, 60 marks each. And remember, each question will be 60 marks on rural and urban settlements, 60 marks on economic geography of South Africa. And then, of course, what you commonly call map work is made up of 30 marks, and that will incorporate your settlement and your economic geography, making the paper 150. Another point to note, learners, is that all questions are now compulsory. Please note that. Don't leave out any question, because what's going to happen is you're going to lose a lot of marks. No choice questions. Okay. Now, as I said to you already about the 60 marks, all right, and the question 1 will consist, I shot the gun here, of urban and rural settlements and economic geography of South Africa. Let me put my glasses on so I can make a spectacle of myself. All right, each of the 2 questions, note this, will begin with a variety of short object type questions. You've been used to this. That's 7 and 8 marks. All right, so your paper will be split into 7 and 8 marks for rural and urban settlements and for economic geography, those short questions. And if you look at the past papers, learners, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I know we got brilliant teachers out there who have been showing you this. All right, so that's the 7 and 8 marks. All right. The following 3 subsections will be made of 15 marks. That will be 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Okay, those will be your more so-called your application questions. All right, not that the short questions are not application. There will be 2 questions which will include paragraph type questions of 8 marks. So 1 paragraph question for rural and urban settlements, 1 paragraph question for economic geography of South Africa. All right, and learners, please note, no point form here. Eh? And I know sometimes learners, you look at the sort of the marking guidelines and you see it in point form. Please note, that is for markers. And they use that to make it easier to mark. You write in a paragraph. All right? So, let's go on. Right. So the question 3 is map work, okay, geographical skills and techniques, and that will be 30 marks. 10 marks for calculation, all right? And then we say 12 marks for interpretation of rural and urban settlements and economic geography of South Africa, all right, where you have the integration of your theory to your map work. And then, of course, 8 marks for geographic information systems. Multiple choice and short questions like this can be integrated anywhere, all right, of the sections above. Now, learners, we want to highlight something to you. Definitions are now 2 marks. So what does that mean? 2 marks out of 15 marks of a subsection is a lot of marks. So we expect proper definitions. I'm just giving you an example of rural-urban migration. Define that. And if you write, it's the movement of people to the urban areas. That's vague. All right? So what do we need to emphasize? A proper definition. The movement of people from rural areas to the urban areas. A full definition. There's no 1 mark even with your definitions. So please note that. Now, I'm going to look at something here, learners, and I know this has always been an area of concern. You know, I study hard, or I study all my content. I know how to apply it in geography, and there I've got almost a 90% for maths, and I got a C for geography. Geography is very difficult. No. You know, when my daughter sat next to me and she says, Dad, your slides seem very simple. Where's all that fancy stuff? And I said, I want to keep it simple. And that is what I emphasize to you, learners. Keep things simple. Focus on the basics. And what I'm going to show you today, the first part is about the most important part. And that is how to apply your content to the questions. You must remember, there is no 1 mark. If an explanation is out of 2 marks and if it's vague, it's a 0. So get that into your minds. And you know what else I want you to remember, learners? When it's explaining stuff, always visualize, even in that exam, that you're talking to someone that does not know geography. So if you tell him the effects of rural-urban migration on the urban area, there's traffic congestion. He wants to know how. He wants to be explained. So always think, if I explain it to somebody, would they understand my vague explanation? So keep that in mind as we go through the techniques. Now, the action verb, give, all right? A push factor. Notice what I'm doing? I'm highlighting what I'm trying to highlight. My hand is always shaking because of my age. All right? But you can do it. A push factor that causes rural-urban migration. All right? And you notice it's the word give. Okay? So in an action word like that, it's fine. But I would say to you, to be very safe, don't just write educational facilities, because the emphasis is on the push factor. Can you see it's showing you a little diagram here of rural-urban migration? The emphasis is on a push factor. All right? Limited educational facilities, lack of employment or Unemployment can be there, but emphasize the push factor when the word give is in the question. All right? Now, watch what the exam papers generally try to do to you. Okay, it spoke about the push factor. Let's take the next one. It says state. Okay, so of course it's 1 mark. So you're going to state, but watch what happens. The economic or an economic push factor that causes rural-urban migration. Note the difference and note the importance of highlighting these words. Okay, that now it's not just a push factor anymore. It's an economic push factor. So I have to deal with economic factors like lack of employment opportunities, all right, that would come through. I can't talk about the social factors, lack of recreational facilities, okay? I have to make it economic. So playing around with the words and focusing on them and keeping it simple, just focusing on that actually brings through the correct answer. Now look at the next one. It's the word why. Does rural-urban migration impact negatively on the urban area? I'm just using rural-urban migration as the tool to illustrate to you what the action verb wants. So it says, why does rural-urban migration impact negatively on the urban area? So you bring in the why factor. It may involve 2 marks. You don't have to fully qualify it. You have to indicate the why. And in a case like this, rural-urban migration brings a lot of people to the urban area. Okay? You understand? It brings a lot of people. So can you see how I'm answering it? I have to put it in a sentence. Okay, I have to emphasize it. I can't just say people, because now it's 2 marks and I'm asking the why factor. I'm not qualifying it, I'm explaining it on that point. Now let's take the next one. How does rural-urban migration impact negatively on the urban area? Again, I don't have to give the full qualifier. What I have to do is I need to say how. It will result in traffic, an increase in traffic congestion. All right, there will be an increase in the strain on facilities or basic services. You can give examples like electricity, etc. Because what's happening now, it's impacting and the strain has increased. Okay, can you see the how? Now let's go further. Let's look at this one. It says explain how. Now, this would require a qualifier with the explanation. Can you see, learners? Give, state, why, how, now explain how. I can't just write. Let's look at the question first. How rural-urban migration creates a negative economic impact on rural areas. This is quite a high order, because it talks about how rural-urban migration creates a negative economic impact, not just a negative impact now, on rural areas. All right, so first I have to put in both now. I'm explaining the how, the why, and everything into one. So what I'm going to look at first is rural-urban migration will result in the decrease in the population of rural areas, okay, resulting in a smaller market to buy goods. Shops closes down. Can you see what I'm doing? I've taken the how and the why and I've put it together because it says explain how. Now learners, this is a huge challenge. And of course, if you speak to your teachers, they're going to tell you the same thing. Many learners lose marks because of this aspect. Okay, so you may know your content out there, but if you don't apply it fully, each time you're losing bulk of your marks. Okay, now also beside the action word, you also need to look at the mark allocation. All right, the mark allocation. Now this is a map work question. Give evidence from the map that indicates that A is a heavy industry. All right? Now you have to put it in a nice explanation. It's located on the outskirts of the city or CBD. It's located on flat land. I can't just say land. Okay, it's near bulk transport. Can you see it? So sometimes even your give, you need to focus on the mark allocation. Now learners, coming back to the paragraph question, okay, people take this as a huge challenge. It's not. It's basically simple. You see this last question we had down here on the explain now. You gave a full explanation. In your paragraph question, it's 8 marks. So what do you have to do? You have to give 4 points, fully explained. Remember, no point form. All you do is you put it into a paragraph and you fully explain 4 points and you're done. All right, so it's not a huge challenge. No introduction, no conclusion, 4 fully explained points in a paragraph. Okay. Another thing is, when you study, it's important to link topics. All right, I want to show you something here. All right, in this little subsection, it deals with small scale farming and large scale farming. It also deals with the main products, which is beef, and it also deals with food security. Now, if you just study them in isolation, you may come across some challenges. Try to link your sections, all right? Because it can get tested. If you looked at past papers, you'll see there's testing where it's linked, all right? I'm going to give you an example of this, okay? Let's take this. It's about the Bosmara cattle, farming, etc. It picks up on the various things, the conditions and things like that. All right, and the factors favoring and whatever. But this is not my focus here now. I want to show you the questions. Now look at this. All right, it says refer to the extract, obviously. First, it talks about one problem from the extract that poses a challenge to cattle farmers. Factors hindering. Can you see it? Next one, he says, according to the extract, Bosmara cattle breed are ideal for cattle farming. That actually brings out a positive factor. Now watch this, learners. Suggest 2 ways in which the government can assist small-scale cattle farmers to increase beef production. Can you see the concept of small-scale farming coming in? All right? So we're linking sections. Now watch the last one. In approximately 8 lines, discuss how beef production can contribute to food security. So 3 different aspects of that subsection there has been included. So can you see linking your sections is important because each one here is linked. All right? Now, when we look at exam papers, certain things are inserted into resources for a purpose. No examiner is going to misguide you. Now in this, if you look at this, it tells you interpret your resource first before you start looking at all the questions. So if I'm looking at this, it does talk about patterns, but there's more than patterns on this little diagram here. So I need to interpret, why did the examiner put A here? Most probably is going to assess me on this. Let me look at A. Oh, there's contour lines and it's higher up. So wet point settlement. All right. Let me look at B. It shows a farm here and a farm here. It could be dispersed. Let me look at G. It shows linear because it's along a line. Can you see it's applying your information? And the examiner gives you, he makes you focus on certain things because he's going, or he or she is going to assess you on that. Look at C. Look at F. You understand? That seems more like a T shape. Oh, this is near, and the examiner has inserted the word dam. Why? This settlements are near the dam. Oh, it is wet point settlement. So it's about practicing those past papers, learners. It's about practicing them, applying it there, and sometimes you can even work out the questions by just looking at the resource. And that's significant because that's the trick to this. I said, let's keep it simple. I'm keeping my slides simple. Let's get to the basics of it so that you know the basics and you'll see how your marks will jump getting these things right. Imagine writing 60% of your questions being or answers being vague. It means 60% you're going to get a 0 in. You understand? So make sure you answer the question properly. Okay? And there's one more here I'd like to show you. Learners, read your paragraphs or your extracts or your information or your infographics, which consist of diagrams and little paragraphs, etc. Because on many occasions, you will find at least 1, 2, even 3 marks coming from that source here. Look at this. It talks about the PW Gauteng core industrial region. It speaks about it contributes 17%. Look at the first question. What percentage does the GDP, does the country's GDP, does the PWV contribute to? And you just basically take that and put it there. Can you see it? That's your answer. According to the extract, name 2 types of leading industries. And as you go through this, all right, it's involved in so many the leading types of industries. Can you see it here? Electrically supplied, appliances, basic iron and steel. And that's for 2 marks. You take it and you put it in there. All right, so these are techniques, learners, that needs to be focused on. And these are marks for nothing. All right? I'm going to start looking at the basic aspects. These 2 sections are huge, learners. And I know I can see my colleague, Mr. Nair, is busy typing in there, and I'm sure he's addressing a few common areas of concern we're going to address. But I'm going to go through this, not to give you an interview, but to highlight certain aspects. Unfortunately, we're not going to go comprehensively over it. We don't have the time in terms of our 2 hours, but we're going to make sense and look at again the basics of each little section. Okay? So rural and urban settlements, okay, here we have to start focusing. And if you look at this, it talks about settlement and site, situation, you understand? And we need to identify the differences between them. Very important. Because if it's application, then you could get a resource, and if you're not sure about the differences, you may put the wrong concept. All right, so all these things we talk about classification, I'll be talking about size, pattern, function, shape, the differences in the words, and we need to highlight them when we're answering because we may give the shape instead of the pattern. Okay? Let's look at this. Your visual. All right? You can see this. All right? All these factors are on the place where the settlement is, which tells you it's the site, the actual location. Situation, location of a place relative to its surroundings. So, there's the settlement here, and it's looking at transport routes leading to the market. Because first, and you must make sense of it, first you need to look at the area which is fertile enough or to have flat land, water supply to farm on. But secondly, if you're farming on a commercial basis to sell, on a large scale, whatever basis to sell, you also need access to the market. And that's when situation comes in. Can you see that? We need to relate concepts. Okay? And of course, if you have further challenges on anything here, learners, my colleague is waiting and eager for you to bring it to him there. All right? And let's take another one. Difference between rural and urban settlements. Urban settlements, multifunctional. It has secondary, tertiary, quaternary services. And the rural settlements, unifunctional. Basically, it's your primary activities. Okay, and you use visuals, learners, to make sense of it. All right? I'm highlighting the main concepts here. All right? So, let's go on. I'm getting used to my pen also. All right? Pattern. You must associate the word pattern relates to nucleated dispersed. Pattern does not relate to crossroads, star-shaped. That's your shape, okay? And simply, if you can visualize it nucleated, the farmsteads are close by. Not the farms, the farmsteads. And that's why you need to understand. You can't just rote learn geography. Because farms will meet. But it's not about that. It's about the buildings being close together. Can you see it here? And dispersed is when the buildings or the farmhouses are far apart. There was one here. I think it disappeared, but it was there. All right? So it's farmsteads that are far apart. So again, pattern, dispersed, nucleated. Okay? Let's go on. Then we look at shapes. Can you see it? And you need to associate it immediately. So many occasions when we mark papers, etc., we find people mix this up. You know to know it clear and visualize it. Like you have a round where you find the settlements occur around a source or important water point, etc. A linear when it's occurring along a road, a river. Crossroads is the shape of the crossroad where development is happening along those areas. And of course, T-shape down here, all right, where it's happening along a T-shaped road. Can you see it? So lots of it associated, and you know visuals like crossroad. You see it on a visual, you know it's crossroad. All right? Then the types of these settlements, these rural settlements. All right? Now, wet point, and please note, it is situated, it's an area where there's a lack of water. Many learners mix this up. They think wet point, lots of rainfall. Dry point, less rainfall. Don't associate a wet dry like that. Wet point, remember, you need to be near water. Wet, like here, there's a shortage of water. Dry point, you need to be away from the water source or at a higher point. Can you see it there? All right? Because there's large amount of water. It could be good rainfall. There could be flooding. Can you see the differentiation between the concepts? Now, let's take one example, because you always wonder, how is it tested on map work? Now, let's take this one here. I took a small extract of a map. Here you can clearly see the T shape of the road and then the settlement. So if I gave you this little piece here and asked you, what is that? I excluded the rest. It's a T-shaped settlement. If I remove that and gave you this one, remember, it starts off along the road, but then it carries on developing. So this is a clear linear shape. All right, I'm just giving you a few illustrations of how it can be shown on a map. Okay, look at this. All right, yeah, I'm sorry I had to elongate it to make some designs of it. All right, if you look at this, all these settlements or farmsteads are situated near the water source. So, wet point settlement. There's the river here, and these settlements are situated away from the water source and slightly higher land, which also indicates it is a dry point settlement. Can you see it can be on the map? And that is why it's important. And I know those brilliant teachers of yours are always telling you, use the map. And they're having those sessions at least once a week with those maps, etc., to get you clearly identified or giving you little sections of maps. Look at this, learners. Land use in rural settlements. You know what's land use. And according to your curriculum, it talks about farming, forestry, conservation. Later on, we'll talk about the land use and land use zones when we come to the urban areas. All right, but land use, all right, farming, can you see here? Cultivated lands. We can be specific. What type of farming? Crop farming. Forestry. I've got this image a little blurred, but somewhere along the line it was written about a sawmill, etc. So we know forestry. Conservation. Can you see it? Where we're looking at protected areas, or it's also got the Karoo botanical gardens. So almost everything you do can be tested in map work. All right, so practicing with the map, and remember, each mark is important, learners. So practice, practice, practice. Our subject is not out of this world. Again, let's stick to the basics, like I have done here. Okay? Rural settlement issues, all right? Rural settlement issues. When we look at these issues here, that's where we bring in all these rural-urban migration, rural depopulation, consequences of rural depopulation, all right, effects of rural depopulation, social justice issues, and these factors. So take factors and relate them, all right? Now the core factor here is rural depopulation, okay? It's the decrease in the number of people living in rural areas. Then we've got rural-urban migration. It's the movement of people from rural areas to urban areas. They are not the same. And this is where you learn to have differentiation, all right? Differentiating between factors, because rural-urban migration, as people leave the rural areas and go to the urban areas, it does decrease the population and it can result in rural depopulation. But there's many other factors that you can look at that can cause rural depopulation, like a pandemic that spreads and people die and the population decreases, which is sadly happening in many places. All right, and of course you look at push factors, pull factors and push factors. Pull factors that attract people to the city from the rural areas, the better facilities, education, employment, and push factors that force them out, lack of employment, and basic services inadequate, drought, machinery. Okay, so those are the factors, and that's how you play with it. You look at the consequences on the rural area and the consequences later on the urban area when you do urban functions, because they're going to have a lot of people there. In the urban area, it's going to cause congestion, traffic congestion, strain on facilities. The rural area is going to decline because there's going to be less people, all right? Schools will close, shops will close, we have ghost towns, nothing to deal with any spirits. Okay, the ghost town is when there's no more people left there. The town dies because there's no business being done. And also you're going to look at what can be done, all right, to attract them back. And this is where the concept of counter-urbanization also comes in here, from the urban section of this, where you talk about bringing back people and functions towards the rural area, attracting them back. So this is what can be done. All right. I'm going to take one of these questions that I see many learners seem to be picking on. I did note the central place theory, but I'm going to come to that. I'm actually going, and I'm going to go back to this wet point and dry point settlement after I handle this. Okay, so my producer there has highlighted that to me, so I'm definitely going to go back to it immediately before I go forward. All right, so what can be done, like bringing facilities to the rural area, bringing tourism, like having those wine festivals, you mustn't drink, I'm just talking generally about wine festivals, okay, which attract people back. Those old age retirement villages. So it's dealing with everything all in one. You relate it. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go back to this, learners. All right? And I hope I can get quick. Somebody pointed out a wet point and dry point settlement. A wet point settlement where there is lack of water. You notice it's a dry area here. All right? There's not much water. There seems to be one source of water there. So what happens to the settlements? They settle around that water source, which is now called a wet point. Wet referring to water supply. That's why they're around a wet point. Can you see it? They need the water. And on the other hand, if you look at this area, there's huge rivers here, and it could flood. So you're looking for a drier area away from the water source. All right? So therefore, we call it a dry point. It's away or it's higher up away from the water source. Okay, let's go on. We've got quite a bit to review. All right. And I'm not going forward, and I'm going forward now. Okay. Access to resources, and I'm going to pick on that briefly, where there's water shortages, like these people down here who don't have much water, and it becomes a social issue. And of course, in one of the papers, a solution came out, the water wheel. So we look at the problems of the area and the possible solutions to that. You don't have to get into massive detail. You just need the social issues, the impacts of it on the people, and possible solutions. All right, I'm actually going to look at the areas which you have pointed out to me. The next thing you would look at is land redistribution, land restitution, and land tenure reform, which relates to land reform. Okay, you know redistribution is when the state buys the land and transfers it to the people. Restitution is to restore land to the people, and land tenureship is to secure rights for the people. How can we take this further? That's what many learners ask. It's simple. All you know is that land reform can be related to small-scale farming, isn't it? Because you get the land, you can farm on it. Can you see it? It can be related. All right, let's go on. Urban settlements. Now, I know one of you posed the question on urban hierarchies, and I will get to that. Urban settlements, and we need to know the differences between things. All right? Again, because many learners confuse this. All right? Let's look at that differences. That was the origin, and it doesn't seem to be a challenge with many people. Okay, urbanization is the increasing percentage of people living in urban areas. So the percentage, last year it was 40% rural, 60% urban. This year is 30% rural, 70% urban. It's increasing. Growth refers to the increase in the numbers. It doesn't mean that the numbers increase, the percentage increase, because the percentage may stay lower, but the numbers just increase, and so does the numbers in the rural areas. So it's about numbers. All right. Urban expansion, and I do apologize, it didn't come out as clear, is the physical expansion, the urban area growing in size. All right? Growing bigger and bigger and bigger in size. Urban sprawl. Now, many learners mix this up. Urban sprawl can be expansion. All right? It can be because the city is expanding, but it is the formless expansion. Like here, you look at the informal settlements just spreading out in all directions, no real planning. But urban expansion can include urban sprawl, but it also then talks about the planned expansion also that the city does. Okay? A rate of urbanization refers to the pace at which urbanization is happening. And level refers to the percentage and the number of people living in urban areas. So this relates more to developing countries, lots of people moving in. This refers to how many people are urbanized. Okay? And that's a little sketch there that can show you percentages, the classification of urban settlements. Now watch out. This is a classification according to function. And sometimes you can get classification where you move from a farmstead onwards, like a central place, okay, is an urban area that surrounds, provides urban functions to the surrounding rural areas. You can see it here, all right? An urban area, and there's the rural areas around it. A break of bulk, a place where goods are transferred from one mode of transport to another, from the ships to the containers to the trucks. Specialized towns, like when we look at this, the hotels here, the recreation here, and various factors. Learners, I know you're very excited to look at questions like the differences between ubiquitous industries, etc. And I will cover, Mr. Ney is picking up these points, and of course I'll cover that under economic geography. So we have all your questions. Mr. Ney is very efficient in picking that up. Junction town, where major routes meet. All right? Gap town, a gap between a physical feature like a mountain. Can you see? Mountain. And this is a gap through it, a pass. What a nice place to build a town. All right, because people will use that gap to go from one place to another. All right. Urban hierarchies. And this is one that you seem to bring 2 questions out for me. I think you're testing me. All right, you know the work, you're just testing me. All right, so urban hierarchy and central place theory. Okay, and of course, there's various concepts attached to it. All right, let's look at them. It's an area of concern that a few of you have sort of brought up. So let's look at, it's very, very important before we start looking at the whole picture, all right, is to look at the main concepts. I know sometimes when concept comes, you say to your teacher, oh, concept, but in the end you notice your teacher then takes it and integrates it. So first one, you need to know threshold population, the minimum number of customers needed in order for a business to make a profit. If you need 200 people before you can make a profit, that is the threshold population. All right? Then order of good and function. So let's look at a low order good. Remember the word good, your bread. What's so low order about that? It's cheaper. It's bought more often. Can you see? Like the bread. All right. Then a high order function. All right. This car, or maybe for some of you, you're so rich, it's not a high order function. You buy cars every day. All right. But generally, you don't buy cars every day. So it's more specialized. It's more expensive. It's found in higher order centers. All right. And you can get this in terms of your services, etc. So it's found there, high order good. It's found in high order centers, etc. Okay, other examples are hospital, regional shopping centers, centers where you sell cars, whereas this one is found generally everywhere. Okay, you can get it from the store near you, or some of you call it the corner shop nearby you. You can pick it up. All right, no one is staying in Johannesburg and goes to buy a loaf of bread in Pretoria unless they're working there and they're traveling home. Okay, another thing again, can you see low order service? bakery, service. High order service, car sales. Good is a car, good is bread, service is bakery, car sales. All right. Sphere of influence is the area from which an urban area gets its customers. So this urban area has a larger sphere of influence. Maybe it's got higher order services, it's a larger center, so it draws more customers. Range of goods and services refers to the maximum distance a person is prepared to travel to in order to obtain a service. Like if you're buying a car, you're prepared to travel much further, all right, than going to buy a loaf of bread. So the range for the car is much higher. All right. Urban hierarchy, refers to the ranking of urban settlements according to their significance, size, complexity, population size, range of services. Can you see all these words come in now? The sphere of influence. All right. So when we look at this, we look at isolated farmstead. A single farmstead maybe with a farmhouse. All right. There's many more of this. All right. Hamlet, a loose grouping of farmsteads. This is a section that you were concerned about. A village is a more organized group. It may have urban functions in them. All right. It's the only rural settlement that has urban functions. And then, of course, you got a town, which is a small urban area. Most of the time, it just supplies urban functions to the surrounding area. Then you've got a city, a larger urban area with more specialized functions, etc. Then you've got a metropolis. Now, a metropolis is a city consisting of towns around it. Okay? Of towns around it. A conurbation is a continuous urban area which consists of towns and city. All right? So must remember, metropolis has just towns and cities, and of course it breaks it up. But the conurbation is a continuous flow. It's a big urban area where towns and cities overlap. And a megalopolis actually consists of conurbations put together, like the southeastern seaboard of the United States. Then again on the hierarchy, as you were concerned, what do you need to know? That as you go up, it increases in size. The megalopolis is far bigger than the conurbation or the hamlet, all right? And then also, you notice they'll have higher order goods and services. What you get in the city, like maybe even a college or a university, you're not going to get it here. You won't get a car sales in a hamlet, and it's an urban function also, but you will get it in a city down there. You may not get an airport in a village or a town, a big airport. Not always the case, but in a city you may get a bigger airport. So higher order functions and goods. All right, but if we look this way, the order of goods decrease. You don't get that many higher order goods. The number increases. There's more farmsteads than there are conurbations. All right, and of course there are more. So we will have lower order goods, not so many higher order goods. So that in a nutshell is your urban hierarchy. All right. Now, the central place model, which just briefly you need to look at, which actually brings out the hierarchy in terms of the little settlements. Here you would notice this is a village, okay? And of course, the higher one is is a market town. This town supplies this villages, okay, with certain functions, all right? Urban functions, etc. This was Kristalla in his time. That's why he's using that. Then you got a town which is bigger. Can you see it? and they supply this area and the surrounding villages. And then last, you got the big city, which actually supplies all these areas. So his little model illustrates the movement from a small settlement which relies on a bigger settlement, and that bigger settlement relies on a bigger settlement, and therefore in the end the big settlement serves all these places with much higher order services. Okay, you got that, guys? And there was a little thing showing you that urban structure and patterns. And we need to be very clear with this. Urban land use zones, okay, street patterns and building density. Okay, it doesn't seem to be that this is a major challenge, so I'm just going to go through it like that. We look at commercial land use zones, and as your guideline shows you, there are various of these zones: the CBD, outlying business districts, isolated cluster store, but the big one here is your CBD. All right, it's the commercial heart of the city, the tallest buildings, the highest density, because the land is expensive and people want to be there because it's accessible. Businesses are there, so therefore it's high buildings to reduce the cost of the land, and the density is there. Little pictures of these ones: high income residential area, large land, big houses, middle income, single dwellings but closer together, smaller plots, low income residential areas like your low cost housing, houses are closer, smaller plots, smaller houses, informal settlement built up of shacks, etc. Okay? Then your industrial land use zones, that's your zone, and this is a description of the zone. This is a heavy industry, situated on the outskirts, near flatland, etc. And this is your light industry, which is found in the residential areas, transition zone, including the CBD, because it does not create a lot of pollution. Learners are moving through these ones because people have not really highlighted this. Your zone of transition, it's found around the CBD. Remember, the CBD grows into the zone of transition. That's why it's a zone of change. It has dilapidated buildings because people don't really want to, owners move away. They don't want to be there because they know sooner or later they will sell these buildings or this land at a much higher price when the CBD takes over. All right, so it has mixed functions: residential, warehouse, all these different functions found in one area. All right, that is why we speak about a low owner occupation ratio. Okay, then we have the rural urban fringe, where rural functions go into, or urban functions go into the rural areas. And that is things like your airport, your sewage works, things that are not suitable for the urban area, your golf course, all right, where they need silence. Sometimes your gated estates will go there for the aesthetic appeal, etc. Now, please note, learners, green belt is considered a land use and not a land use zone. All right, and you can see here, it also creates a buffer zone between these two areas. It reduces noise, etc. All right, it reduces the ecological or carbon footprints by actually having vegetation there. But it is a land use zone and not a land use and not a land use zone. All right, urban profiles. It doesn't pick up much here, okay, amongst the learners. So I'm just going to briefly go through it. Urban profile is the side view of the urban area. You can see the height, the density. All right, you'll notice there's more density here in the CBD, and here in the rural areas it's much less denser. There's greenery. All right, so we look at the height, density, and we can also make out the different land uses. All right, and there's a little diagram on that. All right, morphology. This is where we look at the infrastructure of various things and the planning of it. Okay? And here again, the land use models, and somebody asked a question on this. Remember, in the past, you had Hoyt sector model. We're basically dealing with Harrison-Ullman. And the idea of Harrison-Ullman is that development occurs around different nuclei, different functions. Okay, like the CBD will look at accessibility, all right, where it's accessible. The heavy industrial area will look at bulk transport. The high income residential area will look at recreation. Okay, so that's what there is there. For the cities here, I know a lot of teachers ask me about this modern American city, third world city. The emphasis of this, guys, and if you need to focus on, it started off as rural-urban migration, but the big thing about this is counter-urbanization, all right, or commercial decentralization, or movement of people from the urban area to the rural area now, all right? That's big. People are moving away from the urban area. Third world country, people are moving to the urban area, all right, rural-urban migration. If we look at the apartheid model, all you need to know is that it was based on segregation in terms of the racial groups. And now the post-apartheid model, all you need to know is now it's moving towards economic sectors, high income, middle income, low income. And if you got an idea of those 4 points, you are relatively safe. Okay? And then, of course, changing patterns, which we look at. Urban renewal refers to the renovating of urban areas. We've got various things like upgrading them, gentrification, changing the front to make it look modifying, or keeping the front of it and modifying the rest of the building. So you see this nice architecture. And invasion and succession, where buildings or land use, it was a residential, it's now taken over by a business area. Okay, decentralization of functions, commercial functions moving to the residential areas like your malls, etc. All right, and the convenience of having different functions in one area. Your mall is a good example. Your banks, etc., are all falling into one category. Okay, urban settlement issues, and the point that you seem to have raised is, we know what's urbanization, the increase in percentage. Okay, urban blight refers to the dilapidated buildings in the transition zone. The factor that you picked up is traffic congestion as an area of concern. And learners, traffic congestion is not too many cars. Traffic congestion is when the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure, cannot cater for the number of cars in the area. Please note that you don't seem to have problem with overcrowding, all right, where the facilities cannot hold, but that's traffic congestion for you, when there's infrastructure cannot cater for the number of cars in the area. Okay? Housing shortages, can you see that? Insufficient housing, and of course where people are crammed in one area, and of course you can get a housing shortage and solutions such as low-cost housing. Okay? Service provision, can you see these young people going to an informal settlement? There's no proper transport, there's no proper sewage works. Okay, informal settlement. And what does service delivery sometimes get into? Because marches, riots, because people are not being given the basic services. Okay? Informal settlements, all right, you know, is settlements which don't have proper infrastructure. And you haven't asked the question, and it's generally, learners, it's basically the characteristics of it, reasons for growth. Why does it grow? For instance, there's not proper employment, associated issues like overcrowding, etc. That's a challenge. Okay? And how do we undo it? There's no other way it can be tested. Learners, I'm going to give you a small break of 5 minutes. So get some water, eh? Not anything else, water. All right? And we'll see you in 5 minutes' time. Howie. Hello, learners. I hope you now refreshed and we can get on. I see there's a huge demand on certain sections of economic geography. We just have an hour left. So we're going to make best use and we're going to focus on the areas that you have emphasized. I've got a list here of them and we're going to do that instead of then going through all the sections. I'm just going to do an overview of them in case you come across any challenges. The last one I stopped was on that settlements, and of course I spoke about that. And on the slide you can see, and I apologize, I'm using a thinner pen now because it's my ugly pen that's gone. And these are the things that you need to focus on in terms of settlements, and you should get in any question, if it's tested, these are the main things that are focused on. The question will be in different ways. Okay? So I'm going to go through the areas that you have highlighted to me. Okay? And you want to get to economic geography. Okay? These were the rest of settlement, the environmental, the social injustices. Okay? Now we're going to get to economic geography. All right? And of course, knowing the different sectors, I'm going to go and do a sort of overview of the things so I can get to your areas of concern. Of course, primary, dealing with extraction from the earth. Secondary, dealing with manufacturing of those resources into products. Tertiary, dealing with services, whether it's transport, whether it's at a restaurant, you understand, whether it's social services, schools. And then quaternary is about information given to things like GIS, etc. Okay? Then, of course, they are related, as you see here. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, that you get maize, which assists in terms of the secondary. You make cereals. And then, of course, the tertiary, where you put it into a supermarket and sell it. And then the quaternary, where you do research to get better products. So all are related. And of course, you must know your concepts. GDP refers to the value of goods and services produced within a country by citizens and non-citizens. And gross national product is the value of goods and services produced only by a country's citizens. And it can be within the country or outside the country. Now, agriculture. Learners, we do need to know there's various information that was last year during our COVID pandemic, and there's various videos, there's various illustrations that have come up with different types of products that's going to be examined. Of course, this year's guideline is emphasizing cattle, okay, and the product is beef. So beef cattle farming can be a specific type of farming that is done there. And of course, as I told you, you can relate small scale farming and large scale farming to beef farming. All right, it's very, very simple. People want to know, what do you get tested on? The areas of production, identification and interpretation, factors favor and hinder, all right, the agriculture of the main product, the contribution to the South African economy. And if you know all that, and as I showed you earlier on, you get case studies. So if you know all that and you can relate it to small scale farming and large scale farming, and also to food security, then you are perfectly safe. Now, you'll notice factors favoring, like a market, fertile soil, floodplains, good rainfall on certain parts, proper research, okay? And then factors hindering unreliable rainfall, a large number of subsistence farmers, pests like locusts, etc. That's crop farming, but also the foot and mouth disease that hits cattle can kill them. So these are factors favoring and hindering which can apply to your study of beef production. All right, the importance it provides food supply. So all these factors favoring and hindering must be related to beef production or cattle farming. All right, now it talks about contribution of agriculture, and I'm not spending a lot of time on that as you want me to get into beef farming. That agriculture spends over a lot of money from agriculture comes from the GDP or towards the GDP. Like in 2007, 3.2% of the GDP was made from agriculture. It may seem like a small percent, but it's millions of rands. Okay, and of course to the balance of trade, that means the amount of imports to exports, and agriculture brings in a lot of money from exporting goods because the money comes in, we sell to other countries. Okay, so I'm going through briefly just an overview if you have various concerns. Now let's get to the section that you're worried about. All right, cattle farming, and remember the product is beef. Okay, all right. It's the one of the, I'm going through the things where it is there. It's the main type of livestock farming. All right. It takes place in the grassland regions, and you would have more. I'm shortening the notes now, so we cover the things. It's grassland regions, therefore it's more in the northerly parts. It needs constant rainfall of 400 millimeters. All right. Main areas is eastern and northeastern parts of South Africa. Another good thing is that there are good infrastructure facilities, abattoir, feedlots, all right, and where beef production takes place. It has commercial farmers who produce over 14 million head of cattle. So we have strong commercial farmers, large number of communal subsistence farmers who also produce approximately 40%. These are your communal or your small scale farmers. Can you see that's large scale? All right. Some factors favoring cattle farming. The market, both home and international, need cattle. Our neighboring countries even buy cattle from us. Okay. We have well-developed commercial farmers. The labor supply is good enough. We have ongoing research to improve the cattle farming. Good infrastructure, as I mentioned, transport systems, abattoirs, all right? And we have areas that have sufficient rainfall, okay? Large amount of grasslands, all right, which create pasture lands for the cattle, and it's required by the secondary activity. Beef is taken in and various products are made, like your lovely wors. Okay, I love wors. Okay, some of the factors hindering cattle farming: droughts, when there's less rainfall, it doesn't work. Cattle need 400 millimeters. Large amount of communal subsistence farmers, they farm in the community. All right, and therefore their production is not high, so therefore they're not producing so much for the market. Diseases such as foot and mouth disease, increased cost of farming each time it's increasing, lack of institutional support, government support, etc., is not that great. Okay, and there's market information for communal farmers. They don't know much about the market, the communal farmers, and how we sell them. Now, learners, you worried again, how do I handle this beef farming? You know this, okay? If you get extracts on beef farming or little articles on infograph, use it. What other thing can happen? I know the factual information. I can relate it to small-scale farming. Okay, how can it assist? Small-scale farmers, cattle farming is needed as a market. And for small-scale farmers, if they produce more, the supply is going up. Remember, some years there was a shortage of beef farming or beef production, so it was a challenge, and we can encourage them. How we can help food security. Okay, food security in terms of producing beef brings about more nutritious food. So if we can relate it to those factors and factors favoring and hindering, then we are 100% fine. And we can apply it to articles. Take the June 2021 paper that was written and you'll be able to handle it. Okay? And then we look at the little questions, but I'm not going to go over that. You seem to be pushing me on the IDZs and the SDIs. Okay? Food security, we've touched on quite a bit. Where, remember again, full definitions, it's dealing with the access to nutritious food, not just food, nutritious food. Okay, you can see it here. When people have access to nutritious food to meet their needs. And when people do not have access to nutritious food, it's not just food. If I sit and eat potatoes every day and I got a lot of it, it's still not nutritious. I'm still not going to be totally healthy. I need my proteins, okay, to have that. Okay, so here again, the importance of food security, okay, it promotes healthcare, it promotes economic development, job creation. So I need to know the importance. I need to know the factors that impact negatively on food security, like people have poverty, they can't afford to buy food, climate, droughts, food crops die, cattle die, less food available. So I need to know factors, at least 4 or 5 factors, learners, because the paragraph question is made up of 4 points. And I need to know measures that can be taken, like, for instance, promoting food gardens, storage and surplus of food, which can be used later, using genetically modified foods, which last longer, and you can make bigger products. So what measures can be taken? And that, in a nutshell, will cover the food security. Okay. I like this cartoon where he talks about the statement that we are food secure. You understand? There's no hungry person, just food insecurity. And this poor guy is looking in the bin. All right? That means there is a problem. Yeah, this is a little bit of sarcasm there. You understand? So you read into cartoons, This person says no food. This guy is begging for food, will work for food. Okay, so interesting stuff. Mining, and again you look at factors contributing, factors hindering, and the importance of mining, but your main focus is on coal. All right, that's your main focus. Now, when I look at this one, and I'll come to it now, of course, your open cast mines, when it develops horizontally and it's open and it's near the surface. Your shaft mines, where you mine vertically going down, all right, deeper into the surface. And of course, you need to know your contribution of mining, how it contributes to the GDP, how it stimulates growth in the secondary sector for manufacturing, etc. Foreign exchange, when it's sold, it brings in money. All right, just highlighting some aspects. And then, of course, factors favoring is the variety of minerals, foreign investment. We have thick seams, so it's easier to mine a lot. Good transport networks to transport our stuff. And, of course, factors hindering, fluctuating prices, whether it goes up and down all the time. Large distance between the mines and the harbors. Johannesburg to Durban or Richards Bay is a long distance. making expenses much more in terms of transport, mining accidents. So we can take these factors and relate it to coal. Okay? So let's look at coal. What do we need to know? Again, where it's located. Can you see? Lots of it near Gauteng, eh? And the largest production is in Mpumalanga. 80% of our stuff is produced, or around that percentage of coal mining is done in Mpumalanga. That is why Gauteng is in such a gifted position for production of electricity, etc. Okay, so can you see the employment? It employs a lot of people. It's one of the top 10 producers in the country. You understand? 25% of the coal is exported. Very good. All right? That we sell so much. Okay, it's the 5th largest exporting country. The remainder of the coal production is on local industries, generation of electricity, okay, is there. Sasol, the petrol company, uses coal to produce fuel. It's exported through the Richards Bay Coal Terminal, okay. That's where it's exported, and of course exporting, the costs will increase. We have a large labor supply for it, efficient transport network for coal. Okay? Right, and we just know that of course when things are taking over, coal demand is getting less. There are various challenges associated with that, all right? And sometimes mines can actually close. Okay, and then of course the secondary and tertiary activities. Okay, factors favoring and hindering did not, and I'm sorry I'm skipping through this because you did not highlight this as challenging areas. Its contribution to the GDP, can you see 29% in 2015. It actually improves transport networks because people can, you have to transport the goods, so transport networks improves. Research to improve production, quaternary sector, all right? By producing in the country, you have less imports because you're producing here now, it's more in the country. You don't have to buy that from another country. Exporting of finished products. Now you can export, instead of exporting your raw materials and getting less money, now you export finished materials and get more money. And as I said, it contributes even to taxes and the GDP. Okay? And of course, you look at the same things. Factors favoring, we have enough raw materials, sufficient energy supply, enough labor supply. Our water supply is sufficient in most cases, and we have brilliant transport networks. I know, I'm coming to the IDZs and SDIs, learners, but I thought I wanted to just go through this so it gives you a brief idea. I know Mr. Nair is getting that message. When are we coming to the IDZs and the SDIs? I am coming. All right. And of course, factors hindering, over concentration, where too many industries brings traffic congestion, strain on resources. All right. Raw materials, most of them, learners, are located in the north. What about the Southwestern Cape or the Western Cape regions? All right, they don't have many of the mineral raw materials, so they struggle a bit, but we'll talk about that later. Some places have a lack of rainfall. We have winter rainfall, but no summer rainfall in the Western Cape. Water projects have to be put in place in Gauteng also, like the Vaal Tugela you did in grade 11, where water was pumped from the Tugela River to the Vaal River. All right. Transport, okay, it's good, networks, but we have a problem. Our largest industrial area is the PWV, and to transport goods to the harbor is a long distance, so it can also be a negative factor. And the congestion that causes. Air pollution also, all right, and now with the Quality Act, if you pollute the air, you're going to pay big fines. So these things hinder industrial development. to a certain extent. Okay. Now, your one question, types of industries. I don't know, this one you've highlighted, and on many occasions it's highlighted. I'll try and pronounce it, I always have a problem. Ambiguous industries. Now, learners, I think a few of you asked me about this. Remember these words, every industry will rely on a market. Now, watch the words that make the difference for you to understand. Let's start with the fact that every industry, there's no market you're not going to produce. But there's a difference here. It's market orientated. And that's the difference. Market orientated means it's near the market. Okay? Like your tailor shop needs to be there. Okay, it needs to be marketed. People need to go there, all right, and it needs to be visible. Your bakery will be nearer to the market, okay? So market orientated. Now, let's take break of bulk, industries that take place between one mode of transport to the next, okay? Then, where it breaks off from the harbor, Durban, comes by ship, it goes by train. You know heavy industry already, none of you had a problem with that, those polluted and light. Then we get raw material industry, which is focused on the raw material like the iron and steel. Industries need to be near the iron ore. Now let's get to your challenge. Footloose. It can be located anywhere. Okay? Anywhere. All right, like your microchip. You can have it in any section. It's a light thing to produce. It doesn't need to be near the metal. It doesn't need to be near the market. You can throw 100,000 microchips in the back of your van and take it somewhere. So it's where it can be anywhere. Ambiguous. They can be located anywhere, but it depends on the market. Remember, market orientated must be related to next to the market. This is dependent, like your telco. You're not going to put fiber in or put up a satellite dish if it's not needed. Okay? So, it's inseparable from the market, but it can be anywhere. You can put fiber anywhere. You can put a satellite dish, as they're doing in the Karoo at the moment, to pick up stuff, and it picks it up for all of us. So it can be anywhere. So my best tip for you learners is that if you see it can be located anywhere and any sort of IT stuff is related to it, like telecom, that's a clear way of differentiating that is ambiguous industries. Okay? This is, again, I showed you here, heavy industry, eh? A nice one to show you on the map work. Core industrial regions, and many people are worried, do we need to know the Durban Pinetown and the P Utenate? You know to know the location, and one of the major products, like for instance, your Durban is your chemical, PE is your motor assembly, all right, and things like that. But you need to focus on the Gauteng PW region and the Southwestern Cape. Okay, I see there's a message also coming. I wish we had more time, learners. All right, so I'm going to go briefly through these ones. You want that IDZ and the SDI. Those are your two main areas, the Gauteng, PWV, and the Southwestern Cape, which you will be studying for this exams. Okay? Right. The Pretoria area, I'm going to give you in a nutshell what's the main focus of these areas. Okay. Factors, it's the largest industrial area in South Africa. All right. It makes a lot of money. Major activities, iron and steel, chemical products, engineering products. Factors favoring great variety of mineral raw materials, good transport network, well linked to other regions, well linked to harbors. It also has a large market, skilled and unskilled labor, cheaper electricity, because it's near the coal mines of Mpumalanga. It has many tertiary institutions to train skill development, and the land is relatively flat. Factors hindering is the over concentration of industries, bringing strain on facilities, traffic congestion, etc. It is far from the harbors. It's about 600 kilometers away from Durban. So you have to travel great distances to take these heavy goods and then put it onto the ships. Okay. They create a lot of pollution and load shedding, when increased cost of electricity is a challenge. All right, when the lights go off, millions of electricity is cut, millions are lost each day. Southwestern Cape, it's the third largest industrial area. And it has a harbor, which is a factor favoring. It has good climate for production of agricultural products. And that is why it's dominated by light industries instead of heavy, because it doesn't have much mineral raw materials. Main industries are labor-intensive light industries like clothing, food processing, fishing, ship repairs. So you notice many of them are associated with the ocean, with the fish and the agriculture, but most of them are light. Hindering factors: far away from the coal mines, so electricity is expensive. All right? Therefore, they have to look at other methods like solar or nuclear, like Koeberg nearby. All right? And various projects to cater for that. There are water shortages, and they have to supplement their water via various projects. All right? Factors again hindering: overconcentration, strain on water supply. Okay, so those are the same factors. Factors favoring: harbor, international airport that's available there, and cheap transportation to other countries. Raw materials are, you'll notice, farming products like fruit and fish, etc. They have good farming systems, all right, labor available, and of course, learners, in everything we can test you on the economic and the social factors. It creates employment, all right, earning results in larger market for goods. It promotes development of new industries and linked industries, all right, better transport networks, the social impacts. It creates employment opportunities. Remember, employment is social and economic. Okay, its earning potential of people increases so they can afford more food. Poverty is reduced. Okay, access to services, because they're earning more facilities are built, more taxes. I know you know this work, but I want to make sure we go over it. All right, so in a nutshell, these are the main things about the Southwestern Cape, the positive and the negative factors. Okay? You haven't asked me about the industrial, all right? But you look at the the good old plan was apartheid, tried to supply basic needs to the people, but of course, preferences were the black communities during apartheid didn't get the full benefits of that. All right, then the reconstruction and development, all right, to provide the basic needs for the people. Then, of course, the growth and redistribution program. Okay, it was strengthening this by creating employment. And then, learners, we come to the IDZ and the SDI. Now, I use the word industrial centralization, okay, where industries are in one area. That's your core industrial regions, okay, like the PWV, the Southwestern Cape core industrial regions, where everything was put together. If I talk about industrial decentralization, it means industries are moving out. And these are some of the strategies that were put in place to allow for development in other areas. Okay, by creating IDZs and SDIs. Okay, so what is an IDZ? It's an industrial development zone. It's one area. Okay, and what was this? It was the main aim of an IDZ is to spread out development. Don't have it in 4 core areas, but to encourage manufacturing of goods instead of the raw materials. Take the goods and manufacture them. So instead of importing goods from other countries, we produce it in our own country and even export them. So we're making more money. You understand? So that is why you find your IDZ is near major transport routes like harbors. The Saldanha Bay is near a deep water harbor. Okay, so it was about producing goods, beneficiation, right? Replacing goods that you bought by producing them in the country. The SDI aims to promote growth in areas that are underdeveloped. So the SDI is built, and the aim here was to create employment and to improve transport infrastructure. By improving transport infrastructure, you're encouraging more investment in the area. Okay. So those were your main factors. And then, of course, it does it very clearly for you here, learners, what you need to study about the different SDIs and IDZs. Okay? Like the Saldanha Bay. Can you see? Location. Western Cape, the IDZ. Developed on the northern shore of the bay. All right? Specific industrial zone catering for oil and gas, maritime, fabrication and repair. It's specific what it does. Main industries, gas and oil, marine repair, steel and mineral production. Okay, factors favoring deep water port. What's a deep water port? It's a deep area which allow for larger ships to come in. Okay, and these ships can carry larger cargo out of the area or bring in larger cargo. So one ship carries more. Good, all right. Good geographical position, located at the point of sub-Saharan Africa, which is good, all right. Growing demand for offshore gas, which brings in a lot of money. Okay, government support, labor supply, sufficient land, sufficient electricity supply. So even it's away from the coal mines, they are using natural energy, renewable energy to produce. Okay. Then the West Coast, the same thing. Remember there they are linked. Can you see it? The Saldanha Bay and the West Coast and the Southwestern Cape. So if you look at that, all three there, there's a linkage between them. Okay. So Southwest Coast is in the Western Cape. It's along the west coast of South Africa. It covers an area 350 kilometers along the Atlantic Ocean. The main industries are steel producing, fish processing, fishing industry, tourism. Notice all these have the same thing, like the Western Cape. Factors influencing location, the deep water port, the cargo facilities, you can keep a lot there, a lot of storage facilities, offshore extraction, mini mill of Saldanha Bay where they produce steel. Okay, so if you know all these main factors, you will be again quite safe with that. Okay? Industrial centralization, as I told you, industries in one area, okay, concentrated like the PWV, and they share the same infrastructure and transport, power, generally large market. Disadvantages, the country's wealth not spread across, a traffic congestion, strain on facilities. I've touched on that already. Industrial decentralization, movement of industries out like your IDZ, SDI. Advantages, less challenges on areas like the PWV, less industries in those areas. Other areas now develop like Saldanha Bay, the West Coast. Okay, disadvantages, the core industrial areas lose their significance because things move away. Okay, the tertiary sector. Now this is added on, and learners are very worried. What do we have to do? Very quickly, learners. Tertiary sector. You need to know the concept. What is local trade? Trade that happens inside the country. What is international trade? It's exchange of goods and services between countries. Can you see it? What is export? When you sell to another country. What is import? When you buy goods from another country. What is balance of trade? The difference in the value between imports and exports. If it's positive, you export more than you import. You sell more than you buy. If it's a negative, you buy more than you sell. Then trade agreements is a wide-ranging taxes, tariffs, trade treaties that often include investment guarantees, like trade agreements between like the European Union, all right, or SADC countries, where you have trade agreements. You charge each people less tariffs. You offer the first opportunity to your neighboring countries, like the EU, European Union does. Those are trade agreements. Transport. What do you need to know here, learners? The role of transport, both private and public, because transport is important for economic growth. Okay, it allows movement of people. If you don't have transport, you can't get to work. All right, provision there makes significant contribution to the GDP because construction of transport networks, you understand. Also the movement, all contribute to the GDP. The quality of transport will also attract investors. Good transport systems. We're going to invest in that country because we can move our goods around. All right. And also what attracts people is the modes of transport and what's good for a country. If you've got rail, road, air, and harbors. Now look at South Africa. We have our harbors right across because we got the ocean on three sides. Can you see? That's what you know to know for there. You need to know what transport is. It's a carrying of people or goods from one place to another. What's public transport? Any form of transport that are available to the public and fares are charged. And private transport, all right, where you and your family drive in a car. There's no charge there. That's for your private use. There's our famous public transport, our taxis. The informal sector, all right? What do we need to know here? What is the informal sector? It's a business that's not registered and they don't pay income tax. They do pay tax, learners. When they buy a loaf of bread, they're paying VAT, but they do not pay income tax. So it's a business that's not registered, does not pay income tax. You need to know the characteristics. They do not pay income tax. They form due to unemployment. There's no jobs. So what do? They have to go and sell whatever. All right. In the roads, your hot dogs, your people selling on the side of the roads, the flea markets. What else? It's low cost. You don't have to put a lot of money to start this. It's labor intensive. People working, not so much machinery and technology. It has no access to credit institutions. Banks don't want to sponsor them. Operations are small scale. Family ownership. Can you see? Some of the characteristics which you know. And the guideline directs you clearly. Reasons, unemployment. You have to go there. Poverty, you don't have money. Illegal immigrants that come in, they don't have proper papers. They can't get formal employment. Also, you don't pay tax. So whatever you get is yours. You don't have to do the other pension funds, medical aid. You don't have to have additional expenses. Okay? Issues associated. All right. Lack of education, entrepreneur skills. They don't get much support from local government, limited access to finance, limited access to infrastructure like storage facilities, refrigeration, all these things down here, and their income is irregular. They may earn so much on one day and less on the other day, so it's never regular. The importance of it, it provides it reduces unemployment. At least people are earning money. It improves the quality of life because people are earning, they can get a little better, and it reduces crime. At least people are working, they don't have to resort to other means to get money. A strengthening of the informal sector, make laws that allow government to regulate the informal sector. You understand? Where they can now have better conditions, health conditions, provide facilities like storage facilities, choosing locations that are accessible, build structures for them, stalls, but places that are accessible, okay? Educate them, train them in entrepreneurial skills, business skills, all right? And all those things that can actually help them develop a better business. I'm doing it in a nutshell, but these are the sections. It can come out as a case study, but you will be fine if you can apply these things. Most important, learners, is to apply these sections to case studies, past papers. All right? Now, I just want to emphasize the various calculations that have changed. Now, calculating distance between 2 points. Okay? Please note that this will be 2 marks. And each step that you do, you will get a mark for it. For instance, it's actual distance equal to map distance times scale. Make sure you indicate the map distance of 5 centimeters. Multiply by 0.5 because you get a mark for that. And then eventually you write down the answer, which is 2.5 kilometers, because 5 times 0.5 is 2.5 kilometers. Okay? And that's another mark. Ensure that in your final answer you do have the unit. I would suggest that you have the unit everywhere, but if you don't have it in your final answer, you will get it incorrect. Let's look at the other example, area. Oh, before I do that, I want to go back very quickly. And I'm not going back, but I might as well say, be careful. Examiners sometimes say, give the answer in meters, then you multiply by 500 if it's the topographic map. Sometimes examiners may test you on the orthophoto map. And if you test you on the orthophoto map, the answer will be 0 or multiply by 0.1 or 100. Remember, the scales are different. It's 50,000 for the topographic map and 10,000 for the orthophoto map. Now, learners, I also want to emphasize to you, our maps have changed. You're going to get the topographic map and the orthophoto map on an A3 page. So you'll be happy about that. You don't have to have this huge map that you need to study on or to work with. You'll have it on one A3 page, topographic map, orthophoto map, and that's it. It's not much different. It's the same things, but it's a smaller area. Then area. Remember, length is always the same, the longest side, and breadth is the shortest side. Please remember. So when you write length and breadth, make sure you write the length below first and the breadth second, if it says length times breadth. If you write it the other way, it may not be marked correct because it's not according to the formula. So length is the longest, breadth is the shortest. Would you remember that? But some people get the answer incorrect and they only get 1 mark for that, but they don't put anything else there. Then you get 1 mark for the distances on the map. Can you see it? 1 mark for changing it into kilometers, multiplying by the scale. If it's a topographic map, 0.5. If it's the auto map, 0.1. And then giving the answer with the unit. But important, learners, to get that correct. Vertical exaggeration, there's a slight difference. Before it was 4 marks, we gave an additional mark now for converting the vertical scale to a ratio scale. So this one is 1 centimeter is to 20 meters. It's not a ratio scale because the units are not the same. So I have to convert 1 to centimeters, and that is the 20 meters. So if I show it 20 times 1,000 equals 2,000 centimeters, I get a mark for that conversion. Then I say vertical scale is 1:2,000 now. It's a ratio scale. Horizontal scale is 1:50,000. And then if I put them in the correct order, I am getting another mark. And then if I show what is the exaggeration, it's 25 times, I get the next mark. All right, so it's 5 marks now, not 4. A grid reference, you know already, learners, in terms of working out. And one problem we always find here, when people measure the distance between latitude, this is the latitudes. You measure the distance here. This is the distance between the longitudes. You measure this way. All right, would you remember that? I'm coming to your question. You want to talk about that bearing? Okay. I'm coming to it. Now, I'm getting to that quickly. And when we work out bearing, magnetic bearing is equal to true bearing or magnetic declination plus true bearing. Right. The first is to work out the magnetic declination. This one is given as 15 degrees 57 minutes west of true north for 1997. So I have to work out the magnetic declination. All right. And I have to work out the true bearing. So let's look at it. The first, I've worked out the true bearing here. So it's fine. If I put it there or I put it at the bottom, it's still fine. So it said calculate the true bearing or the magnetic bearing of spot height 1561 from spot height 133. I draw my cross on the from point. It says from 133 to 1561. So I draw my cross here. I start measuring from the true north in a clockwise direction, because what I do is from the cross I join the point to 1561 and I measure in a clockwise direction. In this case I got 213 degrees. That is my true bearing. So the points here is I always put my cross on the front point and I join the point and measure from the true north in a clockwise. Then I said we need to work out the magnetic declination. The first step is I already learnt, and I'm trying to get to my other page, that for 1997 it was 15 degrees 57 minutes. Okay? I'm trying to get to my next page, and there we are. So first we have to find the difference in years. This year it's 2021 minus 1997, it's 24 years. Now, the next thing tells us that for each year it changes by 2 minutes westwards. So I want to find out the change from 1997 to 21. First, I write the mean annual change is 2 minutes westwards. Now the total change from 1997 to 2021. It takes the number of years times the minutes, okay, which gives me 48 minutes that it changed from 1997 to 2021. Now, because the change is westwards, there's the true north there, There's the magnetic north. All right, and the change is westwards. The angle is getting bigger. So we have to plus the 48 minutes. We add them up, and of course it comes to 16 degrees 45 minutes. Lastly, magnetic bearing is equal to true bearing plus the magnetic declination. So it's 213 degrees plus 16 degrees 45 minutes, which adds up to 229 degrees 45 minutes. You've got 7 marks for this section. Okay? And lastly, your average gradient. Okay, it says VI and HE. What's VI? Vertical interval, the difference in height. So I want to find it between these 2 points. Spot height 1256 and trigonometrical station 1233.5. Okay? I want to find the difference in height. All I do is I take the smallest figure and minus it from the biggest figure. Remember, that's the number of the true trig beacon or trigonometrical station, and that's the height. So I take 1256 minus 1233, and for that I get a mark. Then I want to find the HE. That's horizontal. That's the actual distance between the 2 points. So I measure the distance between the 2 points, which comes to 5 centimeters. I get a mark for that. Now remember, the top is in meters, so the bottom must also be in meters. This is the topographic map. 50,000 is equal to 500 meters, so I multiply it by 500, and I got an answer of 2,500 meters. I get another mark for that. Then I substitute it into the formula, okay, which says vertical interval over horizontal equivalent. I've got my vertical interval, I put it here. I got my horizontal equivalent, I put it here. It's another mark for substituting. And lastly, I express it as a ratio, okay? 1:2, because and remember here, guys, I forgot to mention one thing is, it's not normal division. You take the smallest figure, you want to bring one figure down to 1, like 22.5, you divide it by 22.5. If you do that to the top, you must do it to the bottom, 22.5. And when you divide this, it's 1 over 111.11. So this is a fairly gentle gradient. Okay, because it's 1 meter vertically is equal to, or represents 111 units horizontally. So it's a fairly gentle gradient. Okay, now learners, I know we had to cover a lot of work. I wish we had more time to cover this. I know it's information overload for you, but I'm sure that some of the factors that came through, the questions that you asked, we have tried to answer them, and maybe a few more that Mr. Nair is doing his best to answer. And I hope this has assisted you. Go back now. Your time now is to do past papers. Apply this information. You know the content. I've got confidence in you. As I told you at the beginning, it's about skills. It's about applying those skills. Remember those vague answers? 0. There's no 1. You have to answer properly. You understand? Explain why. Explain how. Remember those things, learners. Practice. Take a memo. Look at it. And therefore you do. Learners, I want to wish you the best for tomorrow. Don't stress. Again, highlight the important words. It's impact, but maybe it's actually saying economic impact that you need to do. All right? Highlight the things. Look for answers in the information. All right? Full answers. Okay? Learners, all the best for tomorrow, and I know you'll do well. We're the best, we geographers. We're the greatest. Thank you for watching this lesson. And please remember, learners, even tomorrow, sanitize, wear your mask, maintain social distancing, keep safe, and obviously, we'll see you the next time. I'm looking forward to it. And goodbye.